My name is Maria Plessel. I'm the executive director of Ministar. Ministar is a nonprofit community organization that builds, nurtures, and engages the tech community through meaningful connection. We've been around since about 2006, and we run a bunch of the different large-scale convenings and events in the tech community in Minnesota. So we're really, really excited to be here. A couple housekeeping items. If you've never used Crowdcast, like I said, use the chat and the Ask a Question feature that's on the bottom. We will be kind of monitoring both of those. Oh, hey, Melissa. Melissa was hired on at the beginning of January. Really looking forward to improving how I communicate with my team / coworkers. Awesome. Hello, Jenna. Hey, Susan. Dylan's here. Awesome, an agile coach. Excited to learn more about how we can deliver all deliver value as a team of human beings. Hey, Rose. Oh, this is great. And as we were chatting a little bit before we started here, I was just reflecting last night on how important this topic is right now. It's always super important, but when you're talking about communication and the importance of communication, while many of us are working remote, and the intentionality that has to go into that, I just think this is a super timely topic, and I'm really excited. We have Hillary's here. Hillary leads a team remotely now. Yep. Looking forward to any insights on how to be a more effective communicator. Awesome. And Lainey's here. Hello. Oh, Software for Good. We love Software for Good. All right. So I think we are going to get started here. I introduced myself, but I would love our panelists to start by introducing themselves. Then we'll go into a little bit of an overview conversation. If you're not familiar with nonviolent communication, we'll talk about what that is, some of the pillars of it, the awesome experience that both of our panelists have, and then we will be jumping into your questions. So like I said, as we're chatting at any time in here, throw your questions in there. You're not going to be interrupting us. We will make sure that we get to them when we get to the Q&A portion. Hey, Eric. And Jeremy's here. Jeremy's starting a new job on Monday. So this will be a great topic for you.
Timely. Yeah.
Very timely. You'll be communicating across an organization, hoping to start off on the right foot. Well, this is the topic for you. So what I will say, why don't we start with Casey. Casey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Me? Mm-hmm. You started to block out right as soon as you said the name. So, okay, cool. I will get started. Hey, I'm Casey, and I'm in a weird spot with my professional career right now. I am currently an instructor and software engineer at Prime Digital Academy, which is like a 20-week intense, immersive kind of boot camp situation where we teach folks how to become full stack developers, and I love it. But I'm actually heading over to SUNA in a couple of weeks, which is it's bittersweet, but I'm very excited for the new adventure. So if you have any questions about Prime, I'm always happy to answer questions about that. And if you ever want to contact at SUNA, I'll be over there soon. Thank you very much. I'm super excited.
Two amazing organizations. If you're not familiar, Prime Digital Academy, just probably the largest boot camp in Minnesota, right?
I don't honestly know for sure, but we are we're like homegrown.
Yes.
A lot of the other boot camps are kind of national, and Prime is homegrown. So we were born right here in Bloomington and then moved out of Minneapolis.
Yeah. And speaking of homegrown, SUNA mini demo alum, and we love the work that they do.
Yeah.
Now, Tara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tara Swanson. I'm an agile coach, have been in the community for almost a decade now, which feels wild to me. But like Casey, I'm actually also in an interesting place in my career. This is really funny. So I'm an agile coach right now at Calabrio in the North Loop of Minneapolis, telecommunications company, but I am actually transitioning over to product coaching and organizational behavior at Industrial Logic, which is a company that I've known about for years. And actually my roots in IT started at DevJam in South Minneapolis. And so I've known the org for a long time, and I'm super excited to dig in. But yeah, just really happy to be here. And I think I have on my LinkedIn that I'm a human-centered communication coach because agility is great, but it doesn't work if we don't know how to talk to each other. So for me, the human-centered part is super important. So that's me.
That is awesome.
Awesome.
Well, fantastic. I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I'm going to pass it over to you two, and I will pop back up when Q&A starts.
All right. Well, we kind of discussed this beforehand, so I think we're going to start with, I'll just give like a little short description. One of my favorite things that I really dig into is nonviolent communication. And it's actually like a whole kind of philosophy of how to approach communication. And the reason I really like it is because it really is putting a lot of the responsibility and the focus on yourself. There's kind of like 4 pillars of nonviolent communication. And I don't have my book right here. I just started like putting stuff away. It's on my bookshelf, but there is a book by Marshall B. Rosenberg that he was kind of like the psychologist that came up with this whole concept. And there's a really great book that kind of goes through everything. So the 4 pillars of nonviolent communication is observation. And the thing about observation that is difficult is that they want to challenge you to be able to observe without evaluating, without impressing your own ethics or morals or any sort of your own stories on top of what you are observing, which can be really difficult because that's who we are, right? That's the filter that we view things through. And so learning how to just straight up observe what is happening is a really difficult skill. In the book, I think Marshall, he talks about when he first heard that, he was like, well, that's a stupid thing to do. And then he realized he was like already impressing his own judgment upon this observation. He's like, wow, that's actually super difficult to just like straight up observe something without already making up your mind about it. The second part is I always get these 2 mixed up, your feelings. So recognizing your feelings. What are you actually feeling? And I think in our language sometimes, especially in English, we don't learn a lot of descriptive emotional words. We have like happy or sad or bummed out, which isn't super descriptive of how you're feeling. Like, are you jubilant? Are you confident? Are you giddy? Are you like depressed? Are you anxious? Like they're in the book, there's like pages of descriptive words. So actually understanding what you're feeling and not just like, oh, I'm just like bummed out, because that's not going to help out the other person very much. So learning to identify how you're feeling. And then the next pillar is needs, identifying needs. So nonviolent communication is basically just based off of this idea that violent communication is sparked by someone's needs not being met. And so identifying the feeling that you're actually feeling and then digging into that and trying to identify the need that's not being met that is causing that feeling. And a lot of times it's inward. And that's why I really like nonviolent communication. It's really looking inward, understanding why you're feeling a certain way. Like the dirty dishes in the sink might be the stimulus, might be the spark, but the dirty dishes aren't what's making you mad. It's kind of like what those dirty dishes in the sink are doing to your needs. Like what need of yours isn't being met by those dirty dishes or by your partner not doing the dishes. And so being able to dig past the feeling into the needs that aren't being met. And then the final pillar is requests. And this is the one that does go a little bit more outward, because once you've kind of recognized everything and you kind of have been able to have an honest look at yourself, you're able to then make the request outward so that you can hopefully get those needs met. And that one I think is really hard for Minnesotans because, you don't want to say like, I need you to do this, it's not, and not follow it up with like, if you're free, if you're available, if it's no big deal, whatever happens, ending a meeting with, I need you to do this, making that a responsible, like giving that accountability to somebody and not being wishy-washy about it, but saying like, this is what I need. So those are the 4 pillars. I was like blasting through that. I'm out of breath. So those are the 4 pillars of nonviolent communication. And again, this is just like one strategy on how to approach communication, but it has made a huge difference in my life, mainly because of the work that I've done on myself. And that is kind of like how I approach communication topics. So just to give a little background on the nonviolent communication that I'm working from, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Tara, do you want to give like your opinions about that, or like kind of where you're coming from?
Yep, absolutely. So, hi folks. Again, I'm Tara, and I'm someone who. Oh no, that's okay. I'm someone who also really believes strongly in us owning our language and what we're kind of projecting out in the world. So, my relationship with nonviolent communication is. I actually, it's something that I continuously want to learn more about. I'm coming more from a frame of how to help teams empower themselves and organizations empower themselves by building in things like psychological safety, which plays really well into nonviolent communication. So if we're leading from a place where we've checked in with ourselves, we know what our triggers are, we know what's going to frustrate us, and we have an awareness of how we're sharing things, that's going to enable us to have much more nonviolent conversations, and also be able to project us into a realm of being able to be innovative, being able to be yourself and really be authentic. So for me, it's really about what do we do when we're faced in these conversations at a team level, an organizational level, but also just on a human level, day to day, whether that be with friends, with family, with your partner. And you're left with an option of, how do I respond to this, and where is this other person coming from, and really checking in with yourself as to how you can, if there is violent communication happening, which I guess for me, I look at violent communication as being, it can be misunderstood at times as being like, something physical because it sounds violent, but to me it's, not empathizing, blaming, shaming people, and maybe even like taking power away from someone. When you're met with that sort of conversation, how do we start to respond to it, and how can we kind of take the power back? We can't be responsible for how other people act, but we can be responsible for our reaction. So that's kind of where I come from. And Casey, I love what you said about the pillars, the 4 pillars, because it plays really well with psychological safety. A book that I love is called The Fearless Organization, and it's by Amy Edmondson, and I'm like #1 fan of hers. She didn't create the term psychological safety, but she's really pioneered it to become this thing that is crucial for teams to be successful. And there's this kind of like 4-piece bubble there, where you have to start with yourself. So much like nonviolent communication, it really begins there, and then that builds into relationships, and then teams, and then ultimately culture, which, to your point, Casey, like that's kind of the hardest one, is to break through. Like, how do we have a shared understanding that it's no longer hopeful that we're honest with one another, but we start to expect it. And it's something that we're doing collaboratively. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I loved when you were talking about, like, we didn't really define what violent communication looks like. And it can be very like actively violent, being like, like yelling at somebody, but it can be, I think more often, it's more like the passive aggressive, dismissive, retreating, kind of just like deciding not to engage, kind of, that's a form of violent communication as well. And I think that's really good that you started to define that. And then I love the psychological safety. There's something that we do at Prime, like halfway through the program, in each cohort, it's a cohort that goes through together. So it's 20 people that are together for about 20 weeks. And what we do halfway through is define our cohort norms. And we do it kind of halfway because they get to know each other. And part of that, it's like 6 weeks is kind of like part-time getting them prepared. So it's about 3 weeks into the super intensive part. So they've kind of gotten to know each other. They kind of understand how to work together, and they understand what makes them feel safe. And then we work together to create these like classroom norms. And basically it's something that we can point to. Cool to be kind. Something we can point to and be like, we don't do that here. Like, or like, hey, we always said that we were going to try something out. Like if somebody wanted to, and it's like, kind of like if you ever have worked at a bar and you are just have like a blanket rule of like, we check everybody's ID, just check everybody's. I don't care if they look old. It's a blanket statement, check everyone's. And then when you go to the table and check someone's ID and they get upset about it, you can be like, well, that's just what we do here. You know, you can kind of point to those are our
right.
notes.
Exactly.
And I really I had a student once that, because I kept saying like, this is a safe space. I really want everybody to feel okay trying things and being themselves and not worrying about making mistakes. And I had one student give me the feedback of saying like, you can't just declare it a safe space. That's something that we attach our own values to. And we have to decide what a safe space looks like. We kind of equated it to, I don't know if anybody's seen The Office, but Michael Scott, when he declares bankruptcy.
Right. When he just yells it.
It out. He's like, I declare bankruptcy.
You can't just yell it.
He kind of just equated it to that. And I was like, that is a really good point. To create that like psychological safe space, it's something that you have to work on, and you work on with each other and decide what that looks like. And you place your own value on top of it.
Right. And that's amazing. I love when people can call those things out, and we can recognize like we don't have all the answers. Like we this is a continuous journey forever. Like no one knows how to be a human in a perfect way. Mm-hmm. So let's just continue to learn and do a better job of that. And something I love that you do that with the cohorts, just kind of getting like a norms for folks to work with one another that you can call back to. I do something similar with teams with working agreements. So have teams look at them not as rules, but guidelines that we hold each other accountable for. So if there's something like, you know, there's folks on the team who are prone to negative spinning about stuff, and we kind of can't get out of our own way, or we start blaming people. I've had folks be like, let's just build in a safe word. Anytime someone says pineapple, we stop doing that. And it's something that they respect with one another. And it can't be imposed upon them. Like here's what I think would be a good idea for you. It really has to come from the team. And when you allow them to come up with it, it really enables them to feel empowered. Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's such a great way to kick off a group project, is to kind of sit down and front load that work at the beginning of the project. I know when everybody wants to just get started, but really talk about how are we going to work together? Here's how I react when I get stressed out. Here's what I need to be successful, you know, and kind of just like laying it all out on the table before you hit that stressful time when those skills just are not as readily available. Like it's hard to communicate effectively when you're super stressed out and tired. And if you kind of lay that groundwork early on, it's so worth the investment.
Totally agree. I've started doing some reading on like neuroscience stuff because it's nerdy and awesome and super interesting.
Yes.
And I've read a lot about how like the amygdala, which is like our fight or flight, like goes into overdrive, and you get so stressed out, you can't focus on other things. And it's the reason why, you know, when someone's micromanaged, they keep making mistakes. I have for sure been in that position in an organization where I didn't feel safe. I felt like someone was watching my every move. And when someone watches your every move, you mess up more because you're literally not able to concentrate on it. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's crazy. The brain is crazy. And just like knowing that you have an emotional reaction to everything first. Everything you feel is emotional first, because that's how we survive, is like, that's a snake, I'm going to run. It's not like, oh, that's a snake. That's just a gardener snake. Like, I don't have to run. I don't have to be afraid. You're just like, snake, run. You know, it doesn't hit that logical part of your brain until afterwards. And so kind of knowing that that's going to happen, it has made me a lot more understanding and just patient with myself, being like, wait for this to get to the logical part. I'm having the emotional reaction right now. Like, let me think about that. And then I remember that happens to everybody else too. And I'm like, give it a moment. Don't react to their emotional reaction, or else it's just back and forth like that.
Right.
So it's fun to understand kind of a little bit about like the physiology that goes into.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. And I think that often, I shouldn't say oftentimes, I think it's getting better, but organizations or executives might dismiss this stuff as like fluff, but like it's real and it's science. And if we ignore it, it just continues to grow into bigger and bigger problems. And if we start putting more of a focus on the humans and how we interact, like we're the ones creating things. So if we're not creating from a space that's open, where we feel free to be creative, we're really stifling like huge parts of ourselves.
Right. And that's why we're getting hired. That's why we are employed. It's like they wanted to hire you. They wanted to hire me. And I have so much to bring to a job outside of just like slapping down code, right? They want my authentic self to be there. And it's really hard for your authentic self to shine if it's just being stifled all the time with all of this like toxic, environment. And so, yeah, some people at first might think that working on communication and having this open kind of repertoire might feel a little fluffy, but it's so worth the investment because it just helps teams become way more vibrant and creative and effective. Like
Absolutely.
You can, if you discuss how you want your meetings to go and you end your meetings with actionable items, and those meetings have open and honest debate and not people trying to win the conversation, they're trying to get to the goal together. Oh my gosh, you can just have one meeting instead of like 5 continuous meetings that keep going.
Right. People are actually able to be honest with one another, and that sometimes should look like challenging each other about what is the right thing to do, but it's not just staving off these parts of the conversation because it's like, oh, I don't know if I should like go to that part yet. Maybe I should just stay where I'm at. It's really about showing up.
Yep. Totally. I mean, I could talk back and forth with you about this all day. I love it. Can we open it up to questions?
Yeah.
Let's do that. A little back and forth.
Yeah. Before we jump in, I love this. And it reminds me a lot of when I was managing teams, and, you touched on so many different things. And I think the passive aggressive communication, I definitely want to touch on that when we get to the questions, because, we've had conversations with AMAs on management and whatnot. And Erin O'Neill did a session. She was talking about, she's like, okay, Minnesota, we need to have a talk.
Yeah.
We need to have a talk about how to show up authentically if you're conflict averse without being passive aggressive and without diminishing. And I think that's super, super important. I know I wish I had this platform when I was managing teams. We even used something as simple as like the 5 love languages and translated it to be just how do you show up on a team, and how do you show that you appreciate one another, and how do you like to be appreciated, right? And so I think all of this is just super important, super timely. I definitely want to get to our questions here. So a couple questions have come in, and as a reminder, throw them either in the chat or the ask question function, either one, we're monitoring that. And we do have some questions that came in previously, but Dylan was wondering, how do we raise the topic of violent communication to people in a way that they can engage with it rather than react defensively to it?
I know and love Dylan. We've worked together in a few capacities before. For me, I really try and be a chameleon, but on the healthy side of the chameleon, to meet people where they are. So if you need to share something with someone that's going to possibly cause them to have a knee-jerk reaction of defensiveness, or you already know this person is prone to that, kind of mentally prepare yourself for that and say, like, how do I think that I could approach this from a way that's still meeting the need of us having to talk about this, but also being aware that this person may take it the wrong way. And they may not. It may be just an assumption that they're going to be defensive. But I actually found myself a couple of years ago in a situation where I had to confront someone about some behavior that was 110% not okay. And I was an engineering manager at the time, and I kind of had to like sit down and mentally prepare myself, like, how can I make sure that I don't get pulled into this emotionally where I'm playing into the defensiveness of what's happening. And I really came from a place of concern. So when you start from a place of concern about what you've seen, and I've used really simple really simple tools in the past, like SBI, Situation Behavior Impact, as a feedback tool. So you're removing, I don't want to say you're removing the emotion, because you're not, but you're really removing the opinion of it. It's about, this was the situation, here's the behavior that I witnessed, and this was the impact that it had. And then it doesn't really fit in it's like SBIN, but like, what's next? How can we get to a different place next time? And give them an opportunity to respond is the other thing. Some people need time to process what they've heard. Some people may have an immediate knee-jerk reaction and be defensive, and unfortunately we can't control that. But for me, it's giving them the facts and saying, these are the things that I've observed. Where's this coming from? And trying to really lead with empathy, because I think a lot of times, even if it is violent communication, people have the best of intentions, but impact is more important than intention. And I think they need to know that. But I'm going to let Casey speak to that as well.
Yeah, those are really great. I think it is really good to be able to approach things with just the straight facts, like the straight observations, and not placing that evaluation on top of it, because you can't really debate straight up facts for the most part. I mean, obviously you can, and you can get very defensive about that stuff. But if it's just like, you were 5 minutes late to a meeting, or if you just say facts, there's nothing they can really do about that. The thing that I like to do is, it kind of depends on the situation, because it's a very general kind of, how do we do this? And so, I like to first put in, I like to front load this into my group projects. And so if you're starting a group project, setting these norms, even if you're in the middle of a group project, you can be like, hey, I feel like we're just, and you base it on effectiveness. Be like, I just don't think our meetings are as effective as they can be. And here, maybe we can come to some terms, we can create some norms together of how we communicate with one another to make sure that we're just really focusing on our goals, and using that as our North Star in our meetings. And we're all super passionate, and we can definitely get into debate here, but I think sometimes the debate starts to take away from our focus.
Yeah.
Which is, deciding this thing. Sometimes, if it's something where it's more personal, I approach it with emotion, honestly. I approach it being vulnerable. I have had, one of the things that sticks out in my mind that one of the first times I kind of stood up for myself was, I created a PR, like a pull request. I had some code I wanted to submit, and I was newer, and it worked right here, but it broke something over here. Which I didn't test. I had the PR up, and one of the more senior developers, who was a consultant, so their consultant firm was basically just only working with this company. So it was kind of a weird relationship, but much more senior than me, very smart. But I didn't really have much of a relationship with him, because he was more back end, I was more front end. So not much of a relationship. And then he commented on this PR with a snapshot of a broken, browser, and said, is this the desired outcome? And I was like, and it's a PR for the whole team. The whole team can see it. And I was just like, of course, that's not the desired outcome, geez, in this public forum, and this is how he's approaching it. And it made me feel like crap. And I could have kind of responded back in this public forum, and gone back and forth, but I sent him a message, and I just was really open and honest about it. And I was like, hey, I think this might have been a joke, but you and me don't have a super jokey relationship. I don't see you a whole lot. And so for me, honestly, this made me feel really bad. It really made me feel stupid, honestly. And, it called it out in public of everybody. Of course, that was not my desired outcome. It was my mistake. I'll go up and fix it. But what you did there just made me feel really crappy, and right away he responded, was like, that was not my intention. I did not even think about that. And he went and he took it down, and then just responded hey, it's broken over here. Can you please fix that? And I was shaking afterwards. Yeah. But I finally stood up for myself, and I did it. I calmed down, because I was ready to just be pounce on him in that public forum. And I was like, that would not get the job done. I don't think he understood what he was doing. And so it's up for me. And especially if there's other green developers, especially, when it's a man and a woman and it's, and there's like that dichotomy there is just,
Preach. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want his, honestly, ignorance in how he was talking to me to affect anybody else. Cause there was like a younger girl on the team who was even newer than me. And I was like, I don't want her to get scared away, And so not only was I thinking like for myself, I was thinking for future developers too. I was like, he's really good. He's a good dude. And I don't think he meant to do this. And he needs to become aware of like his words mean a lot. He's in a place of power, and it really shook me to my core that morning. And I felt good about being able to be vulnerable at work and say like, this made me feel really bad.
Right. I'm so glad that you did, because so many times we're in a situation like that and we just freeze. But I saw that Susan made a comment about vagal nerve health is so important. Polyvagal theory is like super interesting, but it's all about like the nervous system, and you describing how you shook afterwards. That's a nervous system response to trauma. You're like, oh, that was really scary. And it's like when birds hit windows and they're okay afterwards, they shake. It's to really like shake the trauma out of their body. And I think it's important for us to listen to that when that happens. Like you noticed right away, like, oh, my body was shaking afterwards because you were kind of shaking that stuff loose. I think that's awesome. I'm so glad that you were able to do that.
Absolutely. I was really glad afterwards too. And I felt like we had an even better relationship from then on out, because we had actually built something on a level of trust, and we were able to speak honestly back and forth. And so I'm really glad I did it, but it was very nerve wracking, because especially when I was talking up too, and I was just like, hi, I know I'm amazing, but that made me feel really bad.
I love that.
But I think the other thing that you're touching on too is those power dynamics too. And I remember having a conversation. I was in a room with, I was like a program manager somewhere, and the executive director was in a meeting with us, and we were working on something with other directors and everything. And I had this executive director that was just like, well, I don't understand why people don't feel comfortable just like giving us, me the feedback right to my face. And I want all this feedback. Like, why don't people? And I'm like, well, like, so it's something that I remind myself now that I'm in a position of leadership, is that even if I don't see myself that way, and I don't see myself as like a hierarchy, it doesn't matter, right? Like, because other people, like there are things that like I do have more power in, even if I don't see myself that way, right? So I love that you touched on that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, we have. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's a tough one. Like, I think all this communication stuff, we're not gonna have any like silver bullets here. It is hard, but it's something that it's just like you have to practice. Yeah. Like the fact, like I feel like that day where I kind of stood up for myself was definitely a turning point where I started practicing that more and more and putting myself in those uncomfortable situations. So, it is tough. And it can be really tough when you're a new employee too, because you don't want to stir the pot. Right. But I feel like it's stirring for good. It's not just just to stir it up for drama's sake. So,
and Dylan hit on it right there in the chat about vulnerability, and I think that there's a chain reaction that happens when you are vulnerable, because the other people see that and they allow themselves to be more vulnerable too.
Right. I mean, Brene Brown isn't famous for no reason. I mean, there's a lot of validity to vulnerability, and not looking like we do ourselves such a disservice by looking at it as a weakness. And I think it becomes like a power play type thing. I mean, I've seen it at executive levels where it's like, I'm not weak. I'm, super strong, and I can put on this mask. It's like, well, if you're putting on the mask, then you're not presenting yourself authentically, and people will know that. People can tell. They see it. Like they want. Please be flawed. If you've made a mistake, if you're, a CEO and maybe you've shared something that you shouldn't have shared, or you say something in passing that you shouldn't have, and you recognize that mistake, if you acknowledge that publicly with humility and vulnerability, huge response and huge compassionate response from your employees, as opposed to just either pretending it didn't happen or pretending like you have to put on this mask, because it's really a disservice.
Agreed. Yeah. And leaders have such a responsibility to really set the tone for the group, because if you lead with that, if you lead with vulnerability and honesty and compassion and empathy, your team will reciprocate. And that is like, I feel like when people, that is what helps create a safe space. And when people feel safe, they really come up with some like amazing ideas, and they are able to collaborate so much more effectively. And it's like, you are just going to get the best out of your people if you give them your best. And I think it's so important as leaders to be able to recognize that that's a huge part of their job, is setting the tone. But it's definitely something that people that are not leaders, they can still kind of make a grassroots movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. Like, I most times I don't think we're going to have the opportunity, no matter where you are in the org, to start from the top down and be able to like, here's what I see and what I don't like, and here's what you should fix. Casey, I think to your point, like having that grassroots organic effort from wherever you are in the organization is something that others will witness and learn from and pick up on.
Yeah, it might be a little bit harder. You're going to have to, it's something that you're doing in addition to your job. And it's something that might make you feel like the wrench in the wheel sometimes, but it is going to be really good and really important. And I think you can totally change like how your team works together if you're able to just like stick with it. Leaders, I think that's, much more easy to trickle down than it is to push up, but you can still definitely do it from grassroots. Like, yeah.
Amen.
Lots of possibilities, lots of things.
Well, we have a question coming up that's kind of tied to this topic. So this is from Max, and Max said, say you join a team where status quo has already been established that includes hostility and violent communication. What are some strategies to initiate the talks to establish that sign points to? So what are some strategies you would kind of get the ball rolling with that?
I have one that popped into my head right away, so maybe this will buy us a little more time. One of the things that I've noticed is even in my own personal life is like with hostility and dismissiveness and any violent communication, there's usually a lack of recognizing each other as equals, as humans, and forgetting that we are cut from the same cloth and we have a lot more in common that we might not have. But it's just so hard to get past that, where it's just like, you are just not somebody I like, where it's just just don't roll with you. I remember right when I first got started, there was somebody I worked with and I just did not get along with him. Our styles were just so different. And then I even started falling into it where I was just like, he's my nemesis. He's my nemesis at work. And I thought it was, a funny thing. And then I look back on it and I'm just like, I really dropped the ball on that, because I never tried to reach out and get to know him on like a human level. I never tried to understand who he was. I just knew that I did not like the way we worked together. I didn't like the way that he went about writing code, and he didn't like the way I went about writing code. And I thought he was really dismissive and by the book. And he thought I was kind of flighty and kind of, I don't know what else he thought. But afterwards, I just looked back and I was like, I just so dropped the ball on that. And it was really something that hurt our working relationship. We never could really work together effectively because I think we just didn't like each other. And we didn't try. We didn't try to like each other either. So I think one of the big things that I have tried to do better in the future, like ever since that moment, has just been like to ask somebody, like, tell me about your weekend. Like, oh, you play board games. I play board games. What's your favorite one? There's something there. We're humans outside of our work. And we have to remember that. And we are not our code. We are so much more out of like our meetings, And so for me, just remembering that human connection and trying to force it a little bit and force that human connection, like in what I've started doing at Prime was like for our staff meetings, we were just starting to like, especially once we went remote, I realized we were not treating each other like humans. we were treating each other like computers. It's like, do you have this? I need your help. Can you help me? What do you need from me? You know, it wasn't ever just like, hey, how are you doing today? What's up? How's that one student, you know? And so I asked my boss if we could start our meetings with rose and thorns. And you say one rosy thing, you know, and it's like a weekly meeting. So it's not a whole lot of time, but you just say one rosy thing and one thorny thing. And it could be your personal life. It could be your work life. It's usually a little mix of both, but it just kind of roots that meeting in a human element. And so, that's one of the big things for me is just remembering that we're humans.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to embarrass myself now because when you said the rose and thorn things, one of my guilty pleasures, you know, I don't even feel guilty about it, but that I've been watching over quarantine is Real Housewives of New York. And I always said I would never watch it. If you want a study in violent behavior and nonviolent behavior or communication, that is the thing to watch. And they were talking about roses and thorns actually last night when I was watching this. But I love that you talk about like finding ways to relate to other people because we do forget, and kind of tied into the whole like New York thing. So, and coming back to the Midwestern thing. So I was born in Boston. My whole family lives on the East Coast. So I was raised in a very loud 3-person family. It was just my mom, my dad, and I, but they are loud and we're very different from other parents. But sometimes that can come across as kind of brutal and can also cross the line. And that's not because of where they live. It is simply something that had become adapted over time, and it was just like accepted, right? So if you're on a team where that behavior is already adopted, that doesn't mean that everyone loves it. They may have, they're now like, they feel like they're just a cog in the machine. And I think it's really important to reach out to allies and leaders who are connected with that team to say, hey, you know, I'm new here and this is a thing that I've observed and I'm concerned. What are your feelings on that? Just to get some feedback from other people so you don't feel like you are this outsider who's witnessing all this stuff. And I've been there before, and it's a scary, alienating feeling to feel like, okay, and you start to question your own sanity. You're like, am I the only one who sees this? Does everyone really think this is normal? Is it normal? I think starting to talk and have conversations with folks who you've started to build relationships with, or to Casey's point, you intentionally reach out to people and start to build relationships so you can ask those questions like, hey, this is the way that we seem to approach problems. And it leads to these heated discussions that don't really turn into anything, or, you know, people's feelings seem to get really hurt. Have you felt like this has been a problem? And I guarantee you, at least like one other person I would hope would say like, yeah, this is a problem that we have. And a lot of people, I think, consider outside sources coming in a breath of fresh air because you're providing a new perspective.
Yeah. I love the saying a culture add as opposed to a culture fit when bringing in employees.
Yes. Yeah. We always need to be adapting and changing. Like nothing is ever static. Yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing is too, and these were more of like kind of outward solutions. And I think another one would be because we all have our own history, right? And we've probably had some pretty traumatic history that we're still carrying with us. Like I got laid off of a job once where I was getting less and less work as a project manager. And I kept being like, hey, is there anything I can do? Like, I'm really worried. I don't really have anything going on right now. What's up? And they'd be like, oh, you're fine. Something's coming down the pipeline. Like, we're just waiting for this new client. And I was like, okay, cool. To my face, you are telling me everything is okay. And then one day I was like, is there anything I can do? I can even like man the phones, like woman the phones, or, you know, clean or whatever. Like, I just want to be here to help. And they're like, no, everything's really great. We're getting something ready right now. And then they laid me off the next day. And so for me, that was very traumatic. And it was something I didn't realize that I was carrying with me for the next several years. And so that was something that I had to recognize in myself too, because that observation, I was putting all of this evaluation, putting my own story on top of it, of just like, they're probably lying to me. I don't want to be here. This place sucks. They don't tell me the truth. But then if I really dug down into it, I was like, oh, no, like they're doing great. They're following up on things. They're giving me feedback. They want me to do better. They are, you know, I was like, this is all kind of the stuff that I'm telling myself right now. And so, using that to like dig down into really understanding the situation. It's like, if people are loud and boisterous and yelling at each other, it's like, are they angry? Because when I hear loud and boisterous and yelling, I'm just like, oh my gosh, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. And it's like, we weren't saying anything bad. We're just getting passionate about it, And so being able to just also kind of catch yourself and be like, what is the actual situation here? Because then if you're able to observe without evaluation, dig down into what you're feeling and then the needs of yours that aren't being met, and that's not going to be the case in all situations, but like you kind of said earlier, basically like sussing out the facts so that when you do approach somebody, you are able to, take the emotion a little bit out of it so that you can just directly approach what situation is making you feel uncomfortable.
Right. And I love that you had that approach with yourself of just like, oh, this is a story I'm telling myself, which is a really kind way to yourself to just check in. Like, you're not beating yourself up and being like, quit doing that. It's, oh, this is a story that I have. I've also definitely done that in the past where, like, if I'm dreading a conversation with someone because maybe we have a tumultuous work relationship and I will psych myself out. I'm like, I've already predicted what's going to happen because I'm so worked up about it. And then I get to the conversation and it's fine. And I'm like, you just told yourself a story and wasted all this energy, and you don't have to do that to yourself. But that's really something I think that takes time and goes back to that nonviolent, that first pillar of really starting with yourself and like recognizing what your triggers are, what your history is, and also that other people are going to have a history too. So they're going to be coming from a different place.
That's huge, because one of the big things, like obviously those first three pillars are looking very much inward. But the thing about looking inward is also recognizing that other people have those things too. Other people are probably telling themselves a story. Other people are having, and it's a practice. Like other people are there might be, totally swept away by their emotions. And there will be times, even if you are practicing this, you'll be totally swept away and then have to backtrack and be like, okay, what happened there? But I think being kind with yourself and just like understanding what is happening, and then being kind with other people in that process as well is like, what, that could have been what was happening. Like now let's have I think one of the big things we need to do, and now that we're in a remote situation, is try to be face to face as much as possible. We have so many ways to just like kind of cop out a little bit: text message, email, Slack, chatting on the side, or even chatting without our video on. I think just seeing each other, because communication is not just the words we are saying. There's so much more that goes into communication. And I think just having that tough conversation that you maybe are psyching yourself out of, and just being like, this is going to suck. I don't want to do this. They're so mean to me, and just having that conversation, but approaching it being like, okay, here's what I want to get out of this conversation. Let me focus on this, because I'm sure this other person would like to, we both want to be successful, and the way we can get so much more done together. And I'm sure that they would more like to work with me than be my enemy,
Right. And having the face is just like a connection, like Jenna just said, video on if possible. There are one of my teams that I work with, in our working agreement, we have something right now where it's like, in this specific meeting, because some people don't like video, but in this specific meeting in retros, we all have them on. We meet each other face to face. It's just our time to really connect. Because I think we can fall into this kind of, and I'm certainly guilty of it, but I'll fall into this avoidant behavior where it's like, you hear jokes now that like, millennials and even Gen X and Y don't want to answer their phone because they don't want to have that connection. I just want to text people, or I want to do whatever. So now we're doing the next best thing with Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, where it's like, I don't have my video on. So, if ahead of time that you're going to be on video, maybe just plan for it. And it only helps build connection, I think, to be able to see someone, especially during this time. Because what I keep thinking about is how weird it's going to be when we're not in this time anymore. And we're all going to be like, we're going to have to adjust again to getting back to like being face to face. It's gonna feel different.
Yeah.
There's
Definitely.
so much there, and I definitely want to make sure we get to the rest of our questions. But two of the things that you mentioned that I definitely want to hit on, just the importance of recognizing the humanness in one another. Management, sometimes you go to like the relationship bank model. So like you have to be putting investments in your people as human beings first, so that you have an established relationship before you can have an effective conversation about, like a corrective conversation or, giving feedback or whatever. And, but I think that one of the crucial things that, Casey, I think you talked about was your experience, and actually you both talked about it, this idea of culture, right? And culture, your culture is not the same as someone else's culture. I also lived in Boston for 3 years, and I'm from Minnesota. And that was my first managing gig. I was like giving someone like a compliment sandwich, and they were like, "Can you just tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can go back to work?"
Yeah, that's Boston for you. Straight shooting.
Right. But it's also on you, not only as a manager, but also as just a team member, to get to know each other as human beings, because you're going to bring your biases in. I brought my biases into like, this is how he wants to be managed, when it was not the case, right? Someone being loud is not, scary or something. Maybe it's just like a cultural thing, right? So I think that that's something that is really, really important when it comes to that. Awesome, Cassie. Okay,
Sorry.
So
I'll be ordering that after this.
Yes. I know we only have 8 minutes left. This is your last chance to get your questions in. We have 2 coming up here. This is from Jasmine. I struggle with a staff person who is very violent in her communication. In all honesty, she has hurt my feelings and undermined my role as her boss so many times that I now just avoid meetings with her if I can. She told me that our meetings are no value to her. How do I take the power back in this situation? First of all, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, first, I would love to, if I was in that situation, I'd really want to be able to sit down with her and say, why do these meetings bring you no value? Like, what does value mean to you? And also just addressing the fact, I'm trying to think, like, feel free, Tara, if you want to jump in, because now I'm like trying to address, like, think of this situation. Because also, I'm sure you want to just be like, I'm your boss. You can't talk to me like that.
Right. It's just
But at least she feels safe enough to express herself, I guess.
That's true. I mean, she's expressing herself. And I think that you hit the nail on the head, Casey, like asking, why is it not valuable? And I really like to bring in the word experiment then when that happens. Like, let's experiment with a different format then. And also provide them the feedback if they are reporting to you. And just as a human, like, that's really hard for me to hear. And here's why. Because this is what I look at as my responsibility here is X, Y, and Z. I want this to be valuable for you, and I want us to build a good rapport. But here's how I see that this has been harmful. And you can kind of fall back into that whole like SBI, like, here are the situation, behavior, impact. And here's like, I want you to be successful. For you to be able to be successful, we need to have a meaningful relationship. That doesn't mean we need to be besties, but that means that let's show mutual respect to one another. And if something's not working, I've seen that a lot with teams where, someone on the team will say, like, I don't get any value out of this. I don't know why we're doing it. And so often my first response is, then let's switch it up. Let's do something different. If this isn't working, let's try something else. Yeah.
And also, if you are going to say something like that, have an idea of what would be valuable.
Yes. Don't just complain. Yeah. Don't just complain and be like, well, this is stupid. The end. Like, and what do you want to do differently? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And I love clarifying information, like clarifying words, because words mean something different to everybody. But I like that you talked about like respect. It sounds like this relationship has not been very respectful. And I think that's really huge in the workplace is like, I think the workplace relationships are based on respect. Like, we don't have to be besties, but we work together. We're working towards the same goal together. Like, at least let's respect each other and the journey that we're taking to get there.
Right.
One thing for me that I really I make my students practice this And I try to do it also. I'm good at like telling people what to do. But you know what? In a situation like that, she knows your relationship is not great. You know your relationship is not great. Have a conversation about it and start it with like, hey, I think we both know that our relationship is not as effective as it could be. And I'd really like to work with you to figure out how we can make it better. Right. And it's like, so just don't even, like kind of be, kind of evasive about it and be like, hey, how would you like me to, hand off these tasks to you, and just be straightforward and be like, I think, we both know this could be better.
Yes. Just have it out.
How do we make it better? And just have that, it's a tough conversation. It feels uncomfortable. You might get shaky, waiting for this to happen. But what's the worst thing that's going to happen? She could be very rude and storm out, and that would be awful. But I think most of the time, someone's going to be a little bit more open to it. And you can even say like, hey, I'm just going to, leave this here. I want you to think about it, because I don't want to plop this on you and then have this conversation right away. But why don't you think of some ways, and I'll think of some ways too, of how we can make our relationship better.
I love that. Yeah. And what Susan wrote about like creating a delta and reaching out in a different way about like, here's a story that I have to get you to understand kind of my perspective of where I'm coming from. Because I know we don't have a chance to get into all this, but like radical candor is a thing, but it's also a very hard thing that you can't just jump into. It's about kind of finding that delta of like, how can I connect with this person without having it feel like I'm putting myself in a tough position. And Jasmine, to your question, I would completely, if someone has hurt me, I am going to let them know that they have hurt me. It's going to be scary. To Casey's point, we might get a little shaky. But I think that you still have professionalism is humanity. Like, I think that you're able to approach that in a way that is saying like, this is what my experience has been. Let's talk about ways that we can do this differently and think on it. I like the idea, Casey, that you have of like, come away from it separately, come back together.
Let the emotional part kind of chill for a second.
Yeah. Totally need to chill.
And I always kind of approach it too, where I'm not just doing this for myself. It sounds like maybe this other person might be a little bit, maybe she knows she's being hurtful, but maybe she doesn't, and like when I approach it, I always think like, yes, I'm doing this for me, but hopefully this is going to be good for them too. And maybe they will learn something about how to, more effectively communicate with others and how their actions affect others. Even people that are their bosses, they can still hurt them. They can still have a very powerful effect and make their working life not as much fun. Like they still have a lot of power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dylan really hit the nail on the head, wanting this conversation.
Me too.
So important. But I do want to get to our last question here because it's really important. And we've touched on it just a little bit, but Rose asks, how do you recover after being in an environment with violent communication and bring my full self into a new environment?
I love that question. Yeah. I think first, recognize that introspectively, you're already recognizing that you have some stuff that you might be bringing with you to this new opportunity or this new team or whatever it might be. So I think taking some time to be introspective about that and thinking about like, what do I want to take with me and what do I want to leave behind? Are there things that I've maybe picked up along the way? I know that I've certainly done this professionally over the years. Like there are things that I'm like, why do I keep bringing this with me? This isn't helpful. And I feel like it's just like some weird, like it's a traumatic response that I've had to something and it doesn't suit me anymore. So I think just kind of letting yourself make peace with it, but also be patient with yourself because this stuff doesn't happen overnight. And be forgiving with yourself because it's going to happen where you're triggered by something and you can always reflect back on that and say like, how do I want to do it better next time?
I love that. I love being patient with yourself. I think we hold ourselves to such high standards.
Oh, yeah.
and I forget what that's called, where it's like everybody else, it's like, well, that's everybody else. But for me, I have to be this good.
I've seen memes on that where it's like, everybody else do this, but not me. And I'm like, right, not me. No, I can't do that.
I have to be better. But I think that's a great kind of like being introspective, looking into that. I think writing it down can be really therapeutic too, like getting it, like lifting it off of you kind of, and then also recognizing it and being really honest with yourself of like, here's how I feel when people don't answer my emails. I feel like I'm going to get fired the next day, because that's what's happened to me in the past or something like that.
Yeah.
And then also with your new job, really let them know what you appreciate about this new environment. I don't think we're vocal enough about what we really appreciate, and be like, hey, I know this sounds silly, but I am so appreciative when you just tell me you've seen my email and you're going to answer it later, or something like that. Anything that just like stands out to you that you're like, wow, this is a lot different. Like, let the new place know that you just are really appreciative, that you feel like you're being seen. You feel like this is a place that you can be very safe and comfortable. Let them know that. Let people know that they are helping you. Let people know they make you feel good, or they're doing a good job. Like, let's just spread those good feelings around, I think.
I love that. I think that's lovely. And it's something that we don't do enough, because we're trying to, especially in this field, in IT, we're trying to problem solve all the time. So it's like we focus on the things that need fixing, but we need to celebrate more and share our appreciation and gratitude for that. To say, like, thank you for being a super awesome communicator, because I never feel lost about what's going on, and I know exactly where you're at. Love that.
Perfect. Well, unfortunately, we are over time. I also could have this conversation for hours and hours. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank everyone in the chat. Fantastic questions. I hope we can come together again sometime soon to keep this conversation going.
Thank you all so much. This has been lovely.
Yeah, it was so much fun, like the back and forth. I loved bouncing off of you.
Me too.
It was so great that people were like interacting too. It makes it so much more fun.
Yes.
So fun. Well, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, y'all.